Hello, this is Anna, and we're going to talk about part 2 of the autonomic nervous system. This should be a really short video, and we're going to look at the visceral reflexes. All right, the visceral reflexes are very similar to the somatic reflex arcs. So same basic pattern, okay, as the somatic reflex arc, okay? Now, when we're using them, it's some of the functionality is a little bit different than with the somatic reflex, because with the somatic reflexes, we saw a lot of the withdrawal reflex, the knee-jerk reflex, the crossed extensor reflex, those sort of things. This is really about receiving and responding to internal stimuli, and then altering things to maintain homeostasis, okay? And yeah, you can think about the somatic in a similar way, but what we're doing here is we're really responding to changes in chemicals. Is an organ being stretched or irritated in some way, changing these little things, okay? Let's talk about where you find the different parts, okay? So now we're going to be focusing in first on the visceral sensory neuron, okay? Which means, where are we going to find their cell bodies? Well, remember that their dendritic ending is going to be a receptor. All right, that's a receptor somewhere out in the body where it's picking up information, okay? Their cell bodies are mostly, there are exceptions, but mostly found in that dorsal root ganglion, okay? And remember, you've got unipolar and you've got bipolar, okay? This is mostly talking about the unipolar ones. The bipolar are the special senses, and they have different locations and different pathways, okay? So the sensory information is going to be coming in, okay? Now with the cranial nerves, it can be a little bit different because they are not coming out the same way as the spinal nerves with the dorsal root ganglion. So there will be also ganglia for the cranial nerves in a different location. And we're not going to spend much time on that, or any time on that, other than to say that it's different, okay? Now, something that's interesting about our sensory system for the visceral information is the way visceral pain axons travel with somatic pain axons, okay? And then when they go into the posterior horn, where they're synapsing before they take the ascending tracts, is right next to each other. Because they are together like this, okay, it leads to a phenomenon called referred pain, which I believe we talked about in an earlier chapter as well, okay? And that is that idea where the pain from a visceral organ is being perceived as coming from skeletal muscle or skin, okay? The other thing I want to remind people about that we've briefly touched on in another video is the enteric nervous system. You'll talk more about this in pt2, so I want you to be familiar with the word, okay? And this is commonly known also as the gut brain, but it has a very important pattern of 3 neuron reflex arcs. Okay, but then there are also reflexes that are basically being controlled by neurons that don't require this arc back to the spinal cord. Okay, all right, let's look at a picture, and what you're gonna find in the picture is it looks very similar to the somatic reflexes. All right, so here we are. We're looking at a visceral reflex arc, and we've got a receptor located somewhere. So let's say it's in your stomach. All right, it's going to pick up whether your stomach is being stretched because you just drank a gallon of milk, okay? That information is going to come along the sensory neuron going into the dorsal root. Here's the dorsal root ganglion. There's the cell body. It's going to come into the posterior horn. It's going to synapse in the anterior horn with a motor autonomic axon. So here's the preganglionic axon that's going to come out. This is a short one. It's going to synapse right here. And then I'm going to have a long preganglionic axon. Looking at that pattern, you know that this is sympathetic. Okay? Because sympathetic has a short pre and a long post. Because the ganglion is in the paravertebral ganglionic chain, or at least close to, it could be the prevertebral as well. Okay? Let's look at the, no, that's basically all I have to say about the reflexes right there. So this is just showing you the motor pathway. Pretty simple. I think you should have it. Just write it out a few times and you'll be good. The last slide is just showing you referred pain mapping. Okay, so because of where the sensory neurons and the where the visceral sensory neurons and the somatic sensory motor neurons are running next to each other and then synapsing in the spinal cord, they create the sensation of referred pain. So what they're showing here is like when the heart is in pain, you feel it more than just right here where the heart is. You feel it down here, maybe further down the left arm. The gallbladder and the diaphragm are a favorite of mine because they can cause this pain up here. Okay. The one that most people are probably really familiar with is the appendix, which has pain right in the middle around the belly button, but your appendix is located way down here. Okay. The TMJ is interesting as well. The temporal mandibular joint can cause pain like up in here or on top of your head or back here, which I think is kind of interesting. So that joint pain. All right, as I said, this video is really short, so we're going to stop there and you can move on to the next one.